With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Welcome to Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. A safe place where both women and men can come and listen to real people talk about their breast cancer experience and the effects that follow well into survivorship. Hosted by Carrie Madrid, a stage 3 breast cancer survivor and founder of the CARE Project. It's time to Handle with Care.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond, and this is one of those Beyond episodes. My name is Chris Donovan, and Carrie speaks with the author of Meditation with Attention, Quick and Easy Ways to Create Lasting Peace. Her name is Anusha, and she's a wellness consultant for Hoag Hospital. And honestly, she's pretty damn awesome. She's one of the first people to create a meditation program to be used at the hospital, and we get to talk to her about how she did that, how to get a hold of her, and how it can help you in your life. This is one of those Beyond episodes, like I said. So, and while listening to the show, go to thecareprojectinc.org for more information about how to get a hold of Carrie, or if you want to be a guest on the show, or if you have a good podcast you think we should be on, let us know. All right, enjoy the show. This is Meditation with Intention with Anusha.
If you follow this show, if you follow me online, if you are a subscriber to this podcast, you know that I am the founder and president of my own nonprofit called the Care Project Inc. And what I realized in starting this project, which, by the way, we provide emotional and financial support to male and female breast cancer patients within the Inland Empire of Southern California. We also are part of the Male Breast Cancer Coalition as advocates and allies with them for raising male breast cancer awareness. But one of the things I realized as a survivor myself of, I will be approaching 10 years from data diagnosis in February of 2022, is that oftentimes the most difficult part of a diagnosis is the survivorship management. So I have created a wellness program within the CARE Project. So not only do we do the financial and the emotional support, but now we have a wellness program comprised of professionals who are licensed and trained, from yoga teachers who are trained specifically in the yoga for cancer practice, a Reiki practitioner, a meditation teacher, you name it, I could go on. And so I was on Instagram and I stumbled across the tail end, and by tail end, I mean literally the last 2.5 minutes of a live interview with this incredible woman who has just written a book called Meditation with Intention. And I thought, oh my gosh, she was keeping it so raw and so real about meditation and the way that yoga and meditation has just sort of been whitewashed, if you will, in the Western world. And I was like, oh my God, I got to have her on my show because I need to make sure that we are doing the practice of meditation and yoga with integrity, if you will. So I personally have always wanted to implement a meditation practice in my life, but like so many others, I just didn't know where to begin. And I do work a full-time job. I do run the CARE Project. I have a podcast show. I helped co-author a book, and I'm freaking busy. So I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I have this image in my brain of what a meditating person looks like and acts like and feels like, and that shit is not me. So I just finished reading this book last night, and I am thrilled. And let me just say that if you are thinking of trying to start a meditation practice, but you think you can't sit for long periods of time, this book is really, really, really for you. It is, again, called Meditation with Intention, Quick and Easy Ways to Create Lasting Peace by the fabulous Anusha Wijeyakumar. Did I say it right?
Perfect,
Wijeyakumar.
Carrie. You nailed it.
Thank you so much for being here. I am going to get to you in a minute, but first I want to get this out of the way. You have an incredible bio, and I just was looking at the book and I was looking at your website. And so I'm just going to read this little bit about Anusha so you all have a background. So she's a sought after motivational speaker globally, I should say, on the science of mindfulness and meditation. She's a wellness consultant for Hoag Hospital, which is here in Southern California in Orange County, one of the leading hospitals in the US, where she's actively engaged in bringing mindfulness and meditation practices for maternal mental health programs, early risk assessment for breast and ovarian cancer prevention programs, and the breast cancer survivorship programs, which is what really speaks to me. She's also one of the first people to create a meditation program used in clinical research at Hoag Hospital. In addition to all of that, and there's even more, but I'm just going to keep it at that. But in addition to all that I've read, Anusha is also a certified yoga and meditation teacher alongside being a certified professional life coach. Girl, I'm exhausted for you.
Well, I could say the same about you, Carrie. I had no idea that I knew about the Care Project, but I just assumed that that was actually your full-time job. So quite frankly, I applaud you and thank you for all that you are doing. I'm not sure how you're doing it all, but thank you for all that
I don't really know either. I'm winging it some of the times I'm just winging it, you know. You know what? I thank you so much for agreeing to join me today, because like I said, I just stumbled onto you doing this live interview. I don't even remember who it was with, and I'm always in the middle of 13 things. And I just heard you speak with,
I think it was Living Beyond Breast Cancer.
Yes.
And Jenny Burkholder, one of the metastatic breast cancer advocates at Living Beyond Breast Cancer, interviewed me. So, and that was wonderful chatting with them. And I've spoken at a few of their past conferences before. And they're a wonderful organization. So I think that's where you found me.
Probably so, because if I'm keeping it real, which is what I do, I don't follow a lot of the big, huge breast cancer organizations, only for my own self-preservation, because, and I'm hoping to change this with my new meditation practice, is comparing myself to others. I created the Care Project not to replace any of the big ones. I didn't, or even the smaller ones around my area. What I did was I took a look at what services and support was out in this area. And I just found a big gap in that none of them supported male patients. None of them provided financial assistance by way of like rental assistance, utility bills, cell phone bills, gas cards or Uber cards to get back and forth to treatment. So that was my goal when I created the Care Project. But Living Beyond Breast Cancer has such an incredible mission. And like I alluded to in the beginning, for me, creating the wellness program was because I realized after 8 years of survivorship, I was still just surviving. And I was managing all of the fallout from breast cancer treatments, right? So the lack of mobility after a double mastectomy, 28 lymph nodes removed. I now have lymphedema, so I'm managing that. Just a lot of stuff, let alone the mental. And the people around you that say, oh, well, you're good now, right? You're done. You're good. You're back to normal. And it's like, yeah, no, I'm a hot mess right now. Right. Because all that mental stuff creeps in of the fear of recurrence.
Yeah.
And then you're told, don't stress about it. And stress does this and stress does that. Well, I could go on forever, but I won't. So here's my thing. First of all, what I want you to do is tell us in layman's terms, what exactly is mindfulness, right? Because that's a term that is thrown around so loosely, it's a buzzword now, and yet we know it's an actual thing. So tell us what exactly mindfulness is.
So I'm just going to keep it really simple. And mindfulness, there's a difference between meditation and mindfulness, and I think there's a lot of confusion around that. So the way that I teach and the way that I practice is when I'm meditating, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not walking, I'm not gardening, I'm not running. I am sitting in a place of stillness or even lying down, as I encourage some of my patients to do, with the spine neutral. And that's meditating for me. Mindfulness, I'm trying to practice everywhere I go. So whether it's my walks in nature, whether it's time with family, friends, whether it's being mindful in the workplace, especially in meetings, very often, Carrie, when we're not talking, we're not listening to anybody else. And so what I really try to do in the workplace is be mindful. So if listening and actively listening when I'm in a meeting. And it's even easier, I think, over the past year because we're virtual to be doing something else. And I really make a point when I'm in meetings to not. So if I'm in a meeting, I'm there, I'm present. And I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. And I'm not getting it right all of the time, but as much as possible. So really, meditation is when we're not doing anything external. We're coming to a place of stillness, of silence. I mean, that doesn't mean that you're not using a guided meditation. I highly recommend guided meditations because they work. Mindfulness is a practice that you can do anywhere at any time. It's simply bringing your mind into the present moment with whatever it is that you're doing, be it driving, cooking, eating, whatever it is, by focusing your attention on your breath and by utilizing the inhale and the exhale to bring the mind and body into where you are.
Right.
And to me, that's the best way of differentiating the practices. Now, of course, there are mindful meditations, but to me, my meditation practice is separate to my mindfulness practice. And hopefully I talk about that obviously in more detail in the book. But it really helps for us to try to be as present as possible because most of the time we're not present.
And I think you described it perfectly because, that's another term, another phrase that gets thrown around. Just be present. Like I'm present. Right. And we all go, woo, woo, woo. No, it really means freaking pay attention. Like
be present. Yeah, literally.
Be present.
Yeah, literally be present. It's not, and I think that's the problem. And part of the issue as well is, and we can get into this, is with what's happened with the commercialization and the commoditization of these practices, that it's now wellness is $1 trillion industry.
Right.
And so you have so many people wanting to work in wellness. And I'm not saying that they don't have good intentions, but a lot of companies and organizations are just kind of profiting off the practices versus having the intention of serving through the practices.
Right.
And the way that I view it, there's nothing wrong with making money from wellness. We all have bills to pay, we all have to live. But is our intention to serve ourselves, Carrie, or is our intention to serve others?
Right.
And if we get back to yogic philosophy, it should be serving others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Beyond serving ourselves, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I think that's fantastic. I want to, sometimes I squirrel because, I have chemo brain. That shit is real. And so if I don't say what's on my mind, I will forget it. One of the things that I really, really, really love about this book is that, the very beginning of it, I was like so excited to start. And then I started reading sort of like the history and and I was like, oh, I don't know how to pronounce that. Oh, I don't. And I got hung up on myself, right? Instead of just going, I'll figure that out. I'll ask her later, but let me move on. And I was so wanting to digest it all that I just set it down for a minute and I went, because my mind is going, and that's me. That's not the book. That's me. That's my mind.
That's all of us, really.
Yes. Well, honestly, yeah.
That's not just you. I think that's most people.
Well, that makes me feel a little better. So I put the book down for about a week because I knew it wasn't going to take me long to finish, right? Once I got going, because I don't read a lot of books, but when I read, I sit down and I get through it. And then I oftentimes go back and reread it just because it's hard for me at this point to really soak it all in. And that's sometimes embarrassing to admit, but the more I talk about it, the more other survivors who've had intense chemo go, girl, me too. So I want to encourage them to read this book and don't get hung up on words you can't pronounce. Doesn't really matter. But what I love about it is that you give a history about it and you describe it and teach the basics of getting started in a way that I could totally understand. And in particular, yesterday I finished the last probably third of the book. So it's real fresh in my mind. And the whole time I was in there, I was like, yes, I was like doing the amen choir. And my daughter walks in my room. My 22-year-old lives with me and she goes, what are you doing? Are you on the phone? I go, no, I'm reading this book. I go, look what she just said. I was like, that's me. And so I say all that to say that one of the takeaways I took is I actually do practice some of these exercises that you point out. And so I don't want to go too far into that, but I'll get back to that. In this book, you give 5-minute exercises, 9 of them, So you say, give me 5 minutes of your day and you can start a practice, right? I love that. That's my favorite part of it because you're giving me practical advice. It's like starting a diet. You don't go and start a diet and go, or a new lifestyle and say, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. You go, let me see if I can take sugar out of my diet. You make attainable goals, right? So I feel like this follows along that line. You also describe the science behind the effects of meditation on your brain and therefore your body. And so, even if someone believes this is a myth that you have to be super spiritual to meditate, right? And to practice yoga, you don't have to be. Because if you're that science nerd, you need to pay attention to the science in this book because you lay it out. Oh my gosh. I had so many aha moments. I was like, oh my God, I never knew that. Our brain is only 2% of our body weight.
Yeah.
Yet uses 25% of the oxygen.
And it's always working. It's always working because even when we're sleeping, we're dreaming. So that's what people don't realize. Energy and the time. We could be spending the day alone and sometimes we're exhausted, Carrie, because our minds just, you know, and that's very tiring beyond often what people are even consciously aware of. And that's why, especially over the past year, we're feeling even more exhausted. And I always, talk about this with my cancer patients as well. So, we're in a global pandemic. We've got the continued racial injustices. We had all the politics last year. And then you have a cancer diagnosis. Or like you said, you're a breast cancer survivor, but what does that even mean? And it doesn't still mean that 1 or 2 years beyond your surgery or chemotherapy that you're not still having the impact and side effects from your treatment. And often that isn't what people talk about. And so I think for me, what I really wanted to get across in the book is anybody can practice meditation irrespective of whether they have a faith or whether they don't. Meditation is for everybody. And I hope also people are aware that you don't have to do all 9 intentions every day.
Right.
I was hoping
I didn't even think about that. I was like, who would even say that?
Yeah, I did have one person that was trying to do it. And I was like, no, just pick one or pick a few or, just something that resonates with you. I mean, really the ultimate goal of to just begin a meditation practice for 5 minutes. And if you can some of the other exercises, great. But I certainly wasn't anticipating that people would be doing every intention daily.
No, you know what? The way that I read it, and this is just the way my brain was functioning in that day, is I read it like, okay, I'm going to start with this mindful practice, number 1, right? I'm just going to try where the minute I wake up, I don't go like this and reach for my phone and see what time it is and how many notifications I have, because I do that, right? And I'm blind in one eye. I have a special contact that I wear. And so I can't see in the morning. And here I have the audacity to put a phone to my face, really? So it's better for me to just sit up and do 5 minutes. And that's what I've been doing. And so I'm like,
that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So I read it like, I'm going to try to do that for X amount of days. And when that becomes like, oh, that's easy, then I'm going to try the others. Right. And then as I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, like this nature practice. Right. So one of the things I do is I have a very humble little home here in Riverside, but I have a beautiful little old school pool in the backyard. Water is my happy place. Right. It is my everything. So I have this gazebo out back with this cushy furniture, and I take my dog out in the morning. He goes and does his business. I turn the water on in the pool so I hear the water running and filling, and I sit down and the sun is rising facing my face, and I just sit there, and I am mindful now of just putting my feet on the ground versus like curling up on the couch with my feet up and a blankie. I don't do that. I literally sit with my feet on the ground, and I will sit there for a good 10 minutes and just listen to the birds, listen to the water, listen to the tapping of my dog's little nails. And I just am still. And then often when I sort of come back to, okay, let me start to get my day ready, I will look around my little backyard and take a photo of something that brings me joy. And I'll post it on my Instagram and my Facebook, and I'll remind my friends, hey, take a look around wherever you're at. I don't care if you're in your car. If you find one little thing that brings you joy, if it's a freaking keychain or if it's that succulent that's planted over there, find a moment and just be grateful for that. And people sometimes laugh at me and they're like, oh my gosh, you're so dramatic. And I'm like, no, you know what it is? It's called having a near-death experience.
Right.
And then finding that you don't take one friggin' thing for granted.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I talk about death, as you've obviously read in the book, and I talk about what are people's, and they've done this through their research, etc. now, and what they're finding, which I shared in the book, is, on people's deathbed, they're not, oh my gosh, I really wish I'd worked more.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had bought that Mercedes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Done it, didn't, work enough. No, that is the people are more like, oh my gosh, I wish I hadn't worked so much. And we realize, listen, we have to work, we have to pay the bills, we have responsibilities, but are we working to live or are we living to work? And unfortunately, we're really working to live, if that makes sense. We're not living, we're working and we're working and we're working. And then we get bogged down because we're exhausted and we're not enjoying our lives.
Right.
And I think what you've shared with that morning practice, which is one of the ones I talked about, because I talk about nature.
I was like, check, I do that one.
Like, done. And because it's such an important reminder, Carrie, to focus on being present and focus on the little things in life, because life is transitory. And we don't really understand that. Now, those of us, like yourself, who have had near-death experiences are confronted by their own mortality and therefore have an awakening. And I see this very often with all of my patients, specifically the metastatic breast cancer patients that I work with as well, who are my greatest inspiration. All of my cancer patients are, but that group in particular, who don't take anything for granted.
Right.
And who are really living far more joyously than most people. Really, Carrie?
Yes. That's a lot of our most listened to episodes is my metastatic friends that I bring in, because we talk about that. We even go so far to talk about the benefits of dating a breast cancer survivor or a metastatic thriver, is that we don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
So while she might be sweating you because you didn't take the trash out last night, we're like, get it to it tomorrow.
Exactly. There's bigger things. And I love that. But and it was funny because talking about the myths of meditation, I work as part of our metastatic breast cancer program at Hoag Hospital, led by the amazing Dr. Sadia Khan, who wrote the foreword.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And she's the director of our metastatic and breast cancer survivorship program at Hoag. She's a breast oncoplastic surgeon as well. And one of the groups, we were talking about suffering and joy. And I was like, I'm angry all the time. And they burst out laughing because they were just like, the meditation person's angry. And we were all just howling because I was like, my practice helps me. And can we just be real? And quite frankly, over the past year, if we haven't been annoyed or frustrated or angry, I'm kind of wondering why.
Why?
Why? There's been so much
There's been so much shit to be angry about.
Thank you.
I'll say it.
So, when I just sometimes look at people and I'm like, wow, where are you? What are you hiding in a cave somewhere?
Yeah.
And they just laughed. And I thought to myself, if only we had more people in meditation and yoga just being real.
Yeah.
Because if we keep it real, it sets expectations to others that, of course, I'm angry and I'm frustrated. But thankfully, I have my practice to rely upon to process those emotions and turn that into the suffering into joy, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Whether that's individual, whether that's collective. And I think most people, like you said, are running around saying all the right things and the buzzwords and not really talking about what's happening now. So the practice becomes redundant, if that makes sense, because we're not dealing with the issues at hand today, yesterday, etc. So it becomes almost like an irrelevant practice.
Right.
We're living in a world that is filled with suffering. We can't avoid it. We have our own suffering, collective suffering, and honestly, we will be meditating now more than ever. That is what I have realized.
Yeah. One of the things that I read, one of the things that really resonated with me was I have written down here, I definitely need this benefit. What it says, I wrote down some notes. It says the benefits of meditation reduces anxiety, fatigue, depressed, can help with alcohol and drug addiction. And studies show that meditation helps to suppress the jumpy part of our brain that results in us constantly living in that state of fight or flight. And you write, it's like an alarm going off in your home for no good reason. So here was my note to myself. In reflecting upon my own thoughts and reactions, I can say I definitely need this benefit. So let's talk a little bit about how our body's affected by stress. And when we're in that constant state of fight or flight, how that affects cortisol levels, which affects not only weight, because you always hear that cortisol, belly fat, affects a whole bunch of stuff. So let's talk about that.
And weight is the least of anybody's concern, really, honestly, when it comes to what is actually happening with elevated levels of cortisol. I know that sometimes in wellness, we get fixated upon that.
Right.
And especially during the past year. And I would just say, listen, just be happy that we're all alive.
That part.
In whatever, seriously.
That part.
And be kind to yourself, because I think over the past year, women have been even harder on themselves. And I see this even with my metastatic patients. And I say to them, that's the least of your concerns right now.
I think it's compounded for us because a lot of us, as you know, working with breast cancer patients daily, is that a lot of us, because we're thrown into early menopause, like me, I was diagnosed just after turning 41, thrown into menopause on all these medications, then went off of them. But nevertheless, I gained 40 pounds over the course of from diagnosis on. And now that I'm in menopause, it takes an act of Congress to lose 5 pounds. So I don't focus on it anymore. I'm focusing on moving and all of that. But I think with COVID and all of us gaining, a lot of us gaining COVID pounds, as we call them, right? Really, seriously, it's compounded because you're already dealing with body image. Some people are dealing with body image.
Many people are, especially after a double mastectomy as well. Some people don't choose to get the reconstruction.
Right.
So, there's a lot going on for breast cancer patients that people don't talk about. And
Right.
a lot of it is to do with body image that's then perpetuated, quite frankly, with this toxic diet culture.
Right.
And that feeds negativity for everybody, but the focus goes to women who very often, if you're undergoing chemotherapy, guess what? You can't even get out of bed.
Right.
So, and I think on that, like you were saying, fatigue can go on for years.
It took me a solid year to recover from the fatigue I experienced after 5 weeks of radiation. I have never in my life napped. I napped every damn day. I was like,
and that's what
who am
people
I?
don't realize. It's not like, maybe for some it is not. I mean, I would say that's few and far between. Mm-hmm. For most people, it is trying to return to a semblance of normalcy post-treatment. And so what I always say to my patients is be kind to yourself. Forget the pounds. Worry more about what is making you feel good in yourself.
Right.
What is making you feel good in your heart and your mind, and do more of that. Yes, get moving if you can. And if you can't, just go and sit in nature, because research is also proving the efficacy of just being in nature versus even having to exercise in nature. So for a lot of my cancer patients that can't even really walk during treatment, just sit outside, even if it's in your backyard or your front porch or somewhere.
Right.
And then be mindful of what you're eating, but don't berate yourself if you just want to indulge. I mean, I just think we have to move away from the rigidity that wellness has become.
That part.
The cleansing and the juicing and the the diets. I mean, I can't even keep up with all of them.
Yeah.
And this faddism that doesn't work, let's be honest.
Yes.
When you go on these faddish diets, you lose the weight for the time that you're in it, and then you just put it all back on, and it's not good for you. What you need to be focused on is how can you make changes in your life that are good for your mind, body, and spirit. That's what we need the focus to be on. And to me, meditation can help you. Now, to go back to your point about the cortisol, it's the amygdala, which is that alarm system that kind of activates the hippocampus, and there's a number of things that happen in the brain. But very simply, when you take an inhale and you force an exhalation, it's that forced exhalation that activates the parasympathetic nervous system response in the body, which is the aspect of our central nervous system that moves us away from constant fight or flight to rest and digest. The sympathetic nervous system has its place. We need it. It is in overdrive for, I would say, most of us over the past year.
Yeah.
Specifically for cancer patients as well. You're living in a state of stress, the unknown. What if the treatment? What about the surgery? What about recurrence, as you've said? And so we're living in this constant state of fight or flight without even being aware of it, when we need to be moving more towards that rest and digest response and activating that parasympathetic nervous system response in the body, which also activates the vagus nerve, which I talk about in the book.
Right.
Which is the longest nervous part of the autonomic nervous system, which interfaces, the vagus nerve interfaces with our heart, our lungs, and our digestive tract.
Right.
So there's a science of the breath. Now, we're all breathing, but our breathing is unconscious. Conscious breath work has a science behind it. Yoga is an ancient science of the mind. It's an ancient science. What people don't realize, it's an ancient science from India of the mind. Ayurveda is the ancient science from India of life, of the body. These are sister sciences, and they're sciences. And what modern science, and I'm a woman of color in STEM, in science and Hogue, is able to verify and correlate are the efficacy of these practices as a way to regenerate our brains, deal with stress, deal with anxiety, and have a positive impact on our physical, mental health and well-being, and our psychosocial needs as well.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that really hit me. I was just telling my assistant in the other room before I came into the studio, like I said earlier, what really gets me with this book is that not only do you give the history and origins in its basics, and then you give, these practices that you can start implementing right away, but then you also talk about the science and explain it in a way where it's kind of like breast cancer awareness. Once I start spitting out to you, hey, men have breast tissue, men get breast cancer too, whoever I say that to, they can never unhear it. They've heard it, right? I felt so convicted when I read your book. I was like, oh, she put science behind it too. And I have to do everything that I can to control what I can control, which is something you talk about in the book, right? So we can sit and worry and worry and worry about a recurrence. And I'm just speaking as a survivor who was stage 3 with lymph node involvement. I'm not on medication. I could not take them. So all I can control is.
Judy was boring.
Hello.
Then Judy discovered ChumbaCasino.com.
It's my little escape.
Now Judy's the life of the party.
Oh, baby, mama's bringing home the bacon.
Whoa, take it easy, Judy. The Chumba life is for everybody. So go to ChumbaCasino.com and play over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hopefully I can work on my mind next, but really what I put in my body, how I move my body. Am I going to drink that martini? No, I'm going to have a half a glass of wine occasionally, whatever. So control what you can control. And I love that you've given me the science behind it. And I'm a very visual learner, but the way that it's spelled out scientifically, how one thing affects the next, in terms of body parts and systems, I was like, oh, I'm sold. Like even if I only do 5 minutes a day, like I have to do this. And I want to circle back to my little 10 minutes that I go in my gazebo in the morning. I don't do it every day, but when I do it, I feel a totally different vibe for my start of my day than when I don't. Because what my day looks like if I don't go directly out back and sit in that space, I don't care how cold it is or how hot it is or how dark it is. I instantly shuffle down the hallway. I, put my contacts in. I might start a pot of coffee or whatever. And I instantly log into work. Yep. While I'm logging into work, I'm turning on the TV to just hear the first, I never watch TV, but I listen to about 10 minutes of the news in the morning to make sure the world hasn't blown up. And then I shut it off because what I found is I take on a lot of people's emotions and a lot of people's things, right? Dealing with patients here at the Care Project and trying to work on myself and trying to work my regular job that I can't absorb everything that's happening in the news. I take what I can and I do my best, but I have to take care of my mental health too. But I feel like shit if I don't take 5-10 minutes in the morning to really just be still without the noise, without the TV. I'm a music junkie, and you mentioned that in the book, like not always listening to music. When I go walk up Mount Rubidoux, I don't put earbuds in and listen to music.
There you go. Yeah.
And I feel different. I feel different.
Yeah. And what I say, and that's what I said in the book, is I used to always have music going, right? If I was at home and I would just have music on, and it's again, I listen to music. I love music, but I keep it for when I'm in the car now, or so it's not suddenly like cut everything out of your life.
Right.
I don't live like that, and I also don't believe that. I think we have to do everything in moderation because that's how things work. Us that are able to do that. So exactly with the music, I always say to patients, on a walk, don't listen to music and don't call your friend. Like try to find another time.
That's so annoying to me too. Like when I'm walking up the mountain, right? And someone is walking behind me because it's there's people up there and someone is on their phone. Number one, I'm annoyed already that you're on your phone. I'm really doubly annoyed when you have it on speaker. Stop it right now. Stop it right now. Yeah. No, there's something to be said about sitting in silence, driving in silence. I've even done that. And I was like, when was the last time I listened to the engine on my car and didn't just turn on the music?
Trying to, and I know that for some people, when they're on a walk, it might be their only time to call a friend or whatever it is, but try to find other times. So when I'm driving now, if I have to make calls, that's what I'm doing when I'm driving. It's calling family or friends who live overseas. So just try to factor it into other ways in which you're operating in your life. When you're in nature, be in nature, or you're not going to really be experiencing the multitude of benefits that nature offers us.
Right. Well, we could talk all day, but
we really could.
I know, but I've got to get back to work and you've got to get back to work. But I want to, there's a quote that you say several times in the book that I am just like, I've adopted it now. The wallpaper of your mind becomes the landscape of your life. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So I realized I kept saying this to patients and to clients, and it just kind of came to me one day just because I really realized that the wallpaper of your mind, and what I mean by that is the constant thought. So there's a wallpaper. That's what people don't realize. There is a wallpaper which is the backdrop to your mind, and you're not even aware that there's wallpaper, right? And suddenly what happens, Carrie? You realize there's wallpaper, and you realize that the wallpaper is a hot mess.
Yes.
Right? And then you're like, oh my gosh, wow, this is the wallpaper of my mind. And then you look at your life and you start to kind of realize, oh my gosh, this wallpaper is becoming the landscape of my life. And we have to work on changing the wallpaper because then we can change our lives. Mm-hmm. And our lives will never be changed with lasting and impactful change if we don't attend to the wallpaper. And I talk about this in the book of Becoming the Sakshi, which is the Sanskrit word for the witness, the impartial observer of the mind. So we're observing without judgment, which we're always doing, without criticism, but with honest, impartial reflection. Wow, this is what's going on in Anusha's mind. At first, when I started tuning in, I was terrified. I was like, this is awful. This is what I'm living with. No wonder I'm feeling anxious all the time. Or like, no wonder I'm just living in this state of background anxiety and hyperactivity, because that's what we do. We just keep doing.
This is where I had the whole amen choir in my bedroom yesterday, because I'm going to share this story with you and then we'll wrap up. But so about 2 years ago, I said to one of my business mentors, who's a public speaker, and I am not one. I am now, but I was not.
I was going to say, I find that hard to believe, but yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I said to him, we were here in the office and I said, we were talking about, he's like, oh, you can grow the Care Project and do this. I was like, no, I like the Care Project like it is. It's got a personal touch. That's what people know about it. But I said, and two, ultimately one day I want to be able to build this so that it's a well-oiled machine so that I can sort of step back and do some other things and work on me, because I have a story to tell. And he's like, oh, your breast cancer story? I said, no, I have a life story that I have been through some shit. And some of it was just put on me by circumstances, and some of it was poor choices. And those poor choices were made for a reason. And I need to figure all that out. And I said, but I'd like to go share some of these nuggets of wisdom that I've learned the hard way with like maybe college age people, right? Maybe high school. He goes, oh, you could totally do that. You're a storyteller. I was like, no, I can't do that. Who am I to do that? I'm not smart enough. I'm not educated. Who am I to do that? Right. And he looked at me and said, "Who are you to start a nonprofit?" And I was like, "Whatever, get out of my office." So he leaves. I swing around in my chair to my email, and there's an email from UC Riverside asking me to be a keynote speaker for this conference, their annual conference. I was like, yeah, that's not what I had in mind. But I was like, that's funny, God. Okay, all right,
Right.
fine.
Yes.
Right. So I say all that to say I had no idea how to prep for it. I had no idea what the hell I was going to add value to these kids who are more educated than I am, because the default thinking in my mind was you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not intelligent enough, you don't fit in there. Right. And I was like, why do I think that? So I took myself on a quick trip and I sat in an Airbnb all alone for a weekend, and I just started typing out on my laptop from my earliest childhood memories to present day, things that had shaped my mind or shaped my thinking. And I was like sobbing by the time I finished reading it back to myself, because I was like, oh my God, that's why I do that. Oh my gosh, that's why I allowed that behavior. Oh my gosh, that's why I married him. Like that's why I
Yeah.
divorced him.
Yeah.
And I thought that is why you automatically default. That's
Yeah.
what I'm going to share with them, because there's not a person I know on this earth that I have had conversation with that hasn't felt like that at some point. So in your book, you talk about looking at yourself through that lens of compassion, right?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. I was like, yes, I'm done with this book. I get it. I totally get it. I love the book. I recommend the book. Everybody needs to read this book. I don't care if you think that meditation and yoga is some woo woo practice. That's probably because you've been looking at it in the whitewashed lens that we see in social media and everything else. And that's a whole other topic. But I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I'm going to wrap with one other thing I wrote down here. Towards the back of the book, it says the point of a mindfulness practice is not to force feelings of happiness and positivity all of the time, as that often makes us feel worse and is counterproductive, as it does not deal with the root cause of why we're feeling these negative emotions in the first place. Hence my story I just told. You say we must examine our own pain and unhealed trauma that can end up making us so reactive. Guess who's reactive? Me.
I mean, we all are, Carrie. We all are. And I think if only people would, I'm reactive. I'm far more reactive than I ever have been before, honestly, over the past year.
Yeah.
And I think without my own practice, they would have filmed me in a car park. Meditation teacher loses her mind.
Loses her shit.
Exactly. Loses it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I always was like, I'm just one step away from being filmed, because thank goodness, thank God I had my practice over the
Yes.
past year. And without my practice, I couldn't have survived it, honestly.
I believe you.
You
I
know,
believe you now. Just
yeah.
following you the short amount of time that I have, I've really gotten to know you, even without speaking, just through our little email exchanges and whatnot, and following your interviews. Yeah, I get that, and I appreciate your passion and your fire and your commitment, especially working with cancer patients. It's incredible, and I just know that everybody should go follow you on Instagram at her handle is Shanti Within, and website shantiwithin.com. Get a copy of the book Intention Meditation with Intention on Amazon, and I imagine it's on your website too, right?
Yeah, wherever. You can get it from wherever you like.
Google it.
Bookstore, just Google it. Wherever
Yeah.
you want to get the book, guess what? You can get it.
Right. And
Yeah.
if you leave us a rating and a review after listening to this podcast, the Care Project's going to be buying more of these books for our library here, and we will give away one to whoever leaves us a review. Let us know how this interview resonated with you. I'm telling you, I am a different person because of this book, and it all makes sense. I feel like I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason and in the right timing. And I know that being asked to do that talk and having to do all that self-reflection, it was on that stage when I gave that talk that I released all pain, hurt, guilt of feeling like I was an inadequate mother, as a young mom, and just all that stuff that goes along with it. So today I say I am actually living life. And before my diagnosis, I was simply surviving. Simply
Yeah.
surviving. And I
Yeah.
hope that everybody doesn't need to go to a place of life-threatening experience to get to that point. And I think if you do, meditation is a great tool.
And I think, thank you, because you've hit upon a lot. People just say, oh, meditation, but they don't explain. I mean, obviously, if you read the book, hopefully but they don't understand why it's so important. And it's because we get to the root cause of our own suffering that allows us to release all of our own internal negative chatter. And it's so interesting, you're amazing. Thank you so much for all the work that you were doing. It's been an honor to be on your podcast. And I love what you said about taking yourself to the Airbnb and healing with putting that presentation together. And changing that intention that when good things happen to us, we always say, oh, why is this happening to me? Why me? What I want everybody listening to think is, why not you?
Absolutely.
Why not you? And I do this myself.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and the thing is, none of us know everything. None of us are the expert on everything. But each of us has unique gifts and talents to offer the world.
Absolutely.
And so what are we doing with our talents? And are we living up to our fullest potential in this life? Or are we, because of our own habitual internal negative narrative, not? So start to shift away from why me to why not me, because you deserve it. All of us do.
Absolutely. I'm probably going to have you come back because we need to talk about releasing fear. We need to talk about all of that stuff.
And thank you. And I can't wait to share about the wonderful work that you're doing, Carrie.
Thank you.
With the CARE Project. I'd love to help spread the message. And I have to say, I love what you're doing about the money, really, in terms of whether it's grocery cards or Uber cards or food or whatever it is, utility bills, whether it's rent assistance, because you're right. I'm not sure that anybody is doing that.
It's difficult to find places that will help patients. And sometimes they may not be in active treatment, but as you know, some of us end up having a delay in reconstruction. And then if you go and you have it later and you have a complication, like I ended up in ICU for 11 days following my deep flap, and I was off work unexpectedly. Luckily, I had family and friends to help, but there's patients that don't have that, and they might just need a little bit of groceries for their teenagers. And if you call around to these other organizations, if you're not in active treatment, they won't even talk to you.
Right.
So we don't do all that. Our motto is never stop caring. And we have our own book, actually. It's called Handle with Care.
There you go. I can't wait to read it.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you a supply of them to give to patients, because what it is.
I would love to.
It's co-authored with two-time survivor Margaret Lesh, who's an accomplished author. And she interviewed 10 other survivors. And then her and myself, we gave our input on various topics, whether it was how we dealt with chemo, tips and tricks for radiation, how we dealt with going bald. And so it's snippets, it's chunks and bits and pieces that you can flip through to what applies to you in that moment, but it's things we all wish we knew when we were diagnosed. So my goal is to get it out into all treatment centers and hospitals to, when you get that welcome packet, welcome to breast cancer, here's some resources, that book is in there. So I will definitely send you that book to preview. And
actually what I would love to do is pass that book on to the two directors at Hoag, Dr. Sadia Khan and Dr. Heather McDonald, who see patients on a daily basis, whether they're previvors, survivors, or thrivers. And they can then recommend the book also, because that just sounds like something that all cancer patients that are going through, whether it's radiation.
It is definitely relevant to all types of cancer. And 100% of the proceeds go back to the CARE Project. So it helps us we don't make any
you to them as well, for sure. So they can find out about the work that you're doing too. But I think that would be lovely.
Fantastic.
And I will definitely, help spread the word at Hoag about the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all your time. I know we're out of time, but thank you so much. And we matched today. So I'm going to take a quick picture with my phone if you're okay with that.
Do.
I'm taking a picture of the computer, people. Bear with us one moment. I know it's not real cute, but let's see. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. So much. I will let you go. Meditation with Intention. Go get your copy, people. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Carrie.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Handle with Care, Breast Cancer and Beyond. Please let us know what you think of the show by leaving a rating and review. And don't forget to share it with a friend. For more information or to connect with Carrie, go to thecareprojectinc.org.
Can you have zero interest in something and still really want it? Your wallet would say yes. And with Simply Zero from South Carolina Federal Credit Union, you can transfer credit card balances and get 0% intro APR for 12 months. That's right, no interest all year. So you pay less and keep more. To learn more, visit scfederal.org/simplyzero. That's scfederal.org/simplyzero. Variable APR ranges from 11.74% to 17.99% thereafter. Limited time offer. Restrictions apply.
Are you struggling to lose weight and keep it off? Tired of wasting time and money on starvation diets that lead to more frustration and stress? If there was a weight loss solution that could actually work for you, would you try it? Then head to Golo.com.
I'm Steve. I lost 138 pounds in 9 months on Golo.
I'm Amber. I've lost 128 pounds with Golo Taking Release.
If you're ready to take back control of your life, head to Golo.com now and see how Golo can work for you. That's GOLO.com.
My sleep is way better. My inflammation has gone way down. Golo saved my life. I was way overweight. That's what sent me down the path. I wanted to make sure and live for my kid.
I have literally tried everything. I was on the verge of getting gastric bypass surgery, and I saw the Golo commercial, and it was the last thing I tried because it worked.
Join over 2 million people who have found a better way to lose weight with Golo. Your healthier and happier life begins at Golo.com. That's GOLO.com. Again, GOLO.com.